It looks like we got a mystery on our hands, I say. Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. This is not a donation reward. I'm going to be completely open and honest with you about that. And the reason for us doing this, in spite of that, is just because I want to. This was always in the plans for when this came out that I was going to get to it, like, right away. And this is, well, the day I'm recording this is the release day. I'm recording this back on Friday, which would be yesterday for you. But yeah, I have been waiting for this basically since it was first announced. And I think it was first announced not that long after Glass Onion came out. So, to just put in an explanation here, I am a big fan of this series of films. It very much has a, like, Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot kind of vibe to it. With each film being its own unique mystery and centering around a singular detective. Though here, instead of, like, the charming, charismatic, like, very intelligent and strong-willed Hercule Poirot, we have Benoit Blanc, this goofy but also very, very hyper intelligent Southern gentleman who hates stupid things that are mystery based, but is very, very strongly oriented with justice. And he's not unbiased. He makes that clear in the first Knives Out movie, which is just Knives Out. He makes it very clear that he's not unbiased. And I would even say he makes it clear in Glass Onion as well. And I believe we reacted to both of the previous ones of these. I could check real quick to be sure, but I believe we did. Let me just get up the right account here. Real quick. Glass Onion. Yeah, so I reacted to Glass Onion back when it came out in December of 2022. And then... And I reacted to Knives Out the year before in 2021. I don't think it had just come out then. I think it was like a year since it came out. I think it came out in 2020. Or maybe even earlier than that. I think for the original, I think it was already out when I reacted to it. And I heard about it, and so I decided to check it out. And then Glass Onion, I reacted when it actually came out. And so now we're doing this one in much the same way. So that's also another reason why I decided to get to this here. Because we've done the previous ones. Because this is like an ongoing, like, reaction series of sorts on the channel. Now for Wake Up Dead Man, for this one, what I know about it is very little. I know, like, the most basic aspect of the premise, in that it at least partially takes place at a church, and some guy is murdered in a, like, it's not a confessional, I don't think, but like a boxed room that has one entrance, and no one else had the opportunity to go in there, but he ends up being murdered in it somehow. And so that's the big mystery. I don't know any like other notable details. I do know that I do know some of the cast that's in here, but I'll wait to talk about that until we get to like the credits or whatnot, until they appear. Um, I don't know everyone who's in here, but I do know a couple of the cast members for sure. I did see a trailer, and I just don't remember everyone who it mentioned was in it. So it's like I saw like I think the very first trailer, and that's it. Um, so I don't remember like any further. I don't think the first trailer even had that many details. It was again just the basic premise. Um, but I'm very very excited to go on this journey with you all, and hopefully this one just ends up being as fun and as exciting as funny as the first two were. I trust Ryan Johnson has this in the bag. This is just proven to be like a great series for his directorial style. So let's get into it and hope for the best. Hold up just a sec. Before you click that link down in the description below to get to today's video, I want to remind you of all the awesome content we have both on this channel and the Princess of Gaming channel. Let's check it out. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I'm gonna share my generalized thoughts right off the bat, and then kind of go more into it. Um, I think that feels right for this movie. So my general thoughts, basic thoughts without detail, is that I think this movie is much better written than the first two, Knives Out or Glass Onion. But I also do not like this movie as much. That might sound weird. That might sound weird. I'm not saying I don't like it at all. I actually very much do. But while I think that this movie is better written, better directed, better presented in pretty much every way, I don't like it as much. And I think the main thing that it comes down to for me is the serious nature of this film. While there is some level of comedy to it to a small degree, it is very much a serious, dark, and intense movie. And that's what they were going for. That's what Ryan Johnson and the cast and crew were going for. While Knives Out was obviously kind of a turn on the classic whodunit with a lot of comedy, a lot of charm, a lot of wit, and Glass Onion was almost kind of like mocking the idea of overanalyzing these kind of, mysteries. This movie is the mystery. This is like the quintessential dark murder mystery with the additional edge of it being centered around, religion. And there's obviously a notably lot to say about that. Which I'll definitely get into. But this movie being so serious and dark and being the very classic dark murder mystery with the entire like impossible murder kind of twist as well is great. It's super well done. All the actors are phenomenal in it. They all did their jobs wonderfully. But this movie is not fun. It's not entertaining. It's not exciting to watch. And that's the point. This is a movie that's meant to make you think. It's a movie that is meant to challenge you. And that's great. That's fine for what it is. But going into this, having enjoyed Knives Out and Glass Onion so much because of their more comedic edge, it was, I will fully admit, a difficult watch. Because, especially with the character of Benoit Blanc, who was definitely the most charming, fun part of the movie, but with his character, it felt off. And not because of it being poorly made. Again, I do believe this was technically better made than the first two movies. I think that the writing, the direction, all of it was just sharper and more well thought out. But this doesn't feel like a Benoit Blanc mystery to me. It doesn't feel like a Knives Out mystery. And that's what's throwing me off. And it makes it even weirder because do you know how this movie was, at least one of the ways that this movie was fucking advertised? It was fucking advertised with Sesame Street. I am not fucking kidding you. This dark, intense murder mystery was advertised with fucking Sesame Street. Netflix decided to make a little short with a Benoit Blanc puppet solving the mystery of who ate, I think it was a pie, and Cookie Monster was being blamed for it. It was this adorable, charming, wonderful little short that was put out. And it wasn't Daniel Craig doing the voice, by the way. I wasn't sure when I first watched it if it was or not, but I saw Daniel Craig actually react to it, and he noted it wasn't him doing it. But point is, that feels like such a weird contrast to me. That, because the thing is, advertising a Knives Out movie with Benoit Blanc sounded fine because of how the first two movies were. But then you watch this movie, and it's like, oh, that feels weird. Because it's such a contrast in tone. And again, I'm not saying this to try and like hate on this movie or try to like lessen it or anything. Because again, I think it was a better movie. But it was so far from what I was expecting that it really threw me off. It's a personal thing. It's more of like an issue that I had because of, I guess, expectation and my investment in these movies already. I've seen Knives Out and Glass Onion so many times. So many times. And I absolutely love them both. And again, I'll definitely be watching this movie more times, and my thoughts on it might change as I continue to do so. But my initial impression is that I just personally didn't enjoy it as much because it was not in line with the Knives Out tone that I expect. But let's go further into it. So, the first two movies obviously dealt with, like, you know, murder and crazy shit like that. Like, even in the first movie, you see Harlan Trombley slit his throat. It's very graphic and very intense. Glass Onion obviously has some crazy shit in it. Like, Duke's death after being, poisoned, quote unquote, with the pineapple, because he's allergic, was intense as fuck. But then you get to this movie, and it's like, there is literal imagery of a dead man holding another corpse under acid corrosive acid. And it's strange showing the skeletal remains of the melted arms and the other guy's entire melted body. And it's like, Jesus fuck. Like, that's really fucking dark and horrifying. Like the stabbed in the back part and everything, it's like, okay, that's one thing. But the imagery of with the acid bath and everything was horrifying. It's like, my God. And then again, it's very dark in nature, and with the theming being like centered around religion and religious persecution and whatnot. It's got a very, very serious tone that just felt off for what this series normally does. And again, there was some level of comedy. Benoit Blanc was as charming and fun as ever. No issues with that. A lot of the other cast had some really good moments of levity. Not as much as like with the previous films, though again, the previous films in terms of tone were more lighthearted. So that's why. But they still got in their moments of levity nonetheless. Probably one of the more funny moments, like, was when they were like talking to the son. I can't remember his name right now. And he's like, I have the entire thing caught on camera, and everyone's outside the door. Judd and Benoit look at each other, kind of like nod, and then Benoit goes to play the video while Judd bars the door. It's like, that was really funny. But that's a rarity in this film. Like, even like cast members in here who can do comedy aren't really as funny. And when they do try to be funny, it's a little more surprising and just out of nowhere. Like, at the end, when Jeffrey Wright calls the son a little dick, or whatever he says exactly. It's like there was so much of his performance as Chase from the video game Dispatch in that one line. And it's just like, it didn't really feel like his character in this movie for the little bit of this movie that he was in. And it just felt like weird to have him like suddenly kind of like have that shift in personality and tone. In terms of the mystery itself, like, obviously, just like with any of these movies or any movie like this, I'm trying to figure it out as I watch. And I kind of was like going back and forth on things and was trying to figure out, there were a couple people I was suspecting. Like, obviously, I suspected Samson at the one point. And I did say at one point that Martha was like, I didn't think it was her, because in my mind, it felt a little obvious. It felt like she was like the most likely suspect. But like as things started going along a little more, I'm like, what if it is her? Because her relationship with the Monsignor was also a little weird. There was almost this vibe that she was into him. Even though that ended up proving not to be true, but it almost gave me that vibe, and so I was thinking, like, what if there was some kind of, like, deal with that going on? But no, she actually just genuinely loved Samson, like, a lot, and so there was no cheating issue or whatever, or scandal there. But, yeah, I was kind of just really going back and forth in my head. There were a couple people I never really suspected. The author guy, again, don't remember his name, but this is like an actor who is played, like, again, I believe he's Moriarty in the Sherlock series. He can play a bad guy, and he can play a charming, fun bad guy. Wasn't giving me those vibes in this movie. It's like I just never really suspected him, because I felt like, oh, this actor has played bad guys before. Well, it's got to be him, right? No, that would be way too obvious. I didn't think it was the son. I just didn't really have any reason to think it was him. I didn't think that like there was going to be like a big twist that Judd had actually done it and that he was like lying this entire time. I didn't think that was the case, though. He did end up lying. He was hiding some information with the flask, but all in all, that just revealed other stuff. It's like I didn't suspect the girl with the chronic pain. I again can't remember names. I'm not great with that. I didn't suspect her at all. Much. Might have suspected her like briefly for like maybe a couple minutes at most. But it's like she never. I don't know. It's like the only suspicion I had for her was like when we saw like the whole picture of that meeting that they had with the Monsignor, and he like was basically talking about bringing them all down, and she seemed like to be in shambles because of the miracles he had promised her of her being healed, and then him telling her straight to her face that it was never going to happen. It's like there was that brief moment where I thought like, could she have done it because of that? Because she seemed crushed by that scene. Like she looked like she was about to burst into tears, and I felt really bad for her. But at the same time, it's like that kind of moment fleeted past, and I'm like, I don't know. I just don't see it. Again, I feel like it'd be too obvious. And there was even points where I was questioning, like, oh, could multiple people have done it? Maybe it wasn't just one person, which that technically ended up being true. Not in the way I would have expected, but it technically ended up being true. And then there's also like the twists and everything that the Monsignor hadn't originally been dead. He was like originally just knocked out by basically being poisoned and then killed after the fact. And I was like, what? I wasn't sure if the knife in the back killed him, but I guess that did do it. So it's like he wasn't alive like before they dipped him and uh the doctor in the acid pool before Martha did that. He wasn't still alive at that point. He was dead. And again, we know the one who came out of the tomb was actually Samson, who was just kind of following along because he loved his wife, because he was, the best of them. It's very different. And like even like just the core cast in general was very different, because like in Knives Out and Glass Onion, it's pretty much you have one good person, maybe two if you want to stretch it to like one of the other people there who's just not as bad as the others. And then everyone else in the core cast, outside of Benoit Blanc as well, is like a dick, an absolute douchebag. It's like with Knives Out, outside of Marta, who is the main girl, all of the rest of the family are absolute douches. Except there's this one girl who is like good friends with Marta. I don't remember her name at the moment. Um, but she's like the only one there who was kind of good. But even then, she kind of let her family lure her into calling Marta and, asking for the fortune back. And so she kind of like, she didn't like argue and fight back against her family either. And then in Glass Onion, you have Janelle Monáe's character, whose name I also can't think of right now. I know she's pretending to be her sister, and I know the sister's name was Andy. I do not remember what her name was, though, because she had a different name. But like she's a good person. I mean, also her sister was, but everyone else there, Miles and everyone invited to his island, were pieces of shit, honestly, for a number of reasons. Some more than others, and in different ways than others. And with Glass Onion, it was made to be super over the top with it. And so they were very caricature like. In this movie, yeah, these characters pretty much follow that same vibe. You have the entire core cast. You have the kind of main point of view character, who in this case is Father Judd. And then you have one other character of the group who's better than all the rest. And in this case, actually, a really good dude. And that's Samson. And everyone else fucking sucks. And then, of course, you have Benoit. And I guess the cop, like, she's, I guess, someone you could also count as, like, but she was, like, you know, a cop. And a very stereotypical American cop, too. Like, and I mean that in the bad way. She was not the best. She was, like, very much without evidence and everything. So I wasn't really with her either. But yeah, it's a very fascinating mystery in terms of how it unfolds and the little things we hear about, little things that obviously mean a lot more, such as the box that the Jesus figure was in, that we ended up finding out was actually for the diamond. There was evidence of that, like the shape of the imprint in the middle of it, what it said on the box and everything. So there were those hints, just like in the first two movies, where there's hints of things spread throughout, which is how a mystery should be done. But then you like have other things like the flashback, showing Martha as a little girl with Grace. I believe that was her name. The daughter of the original priest, the mother of the Monsignor, who was, you know, the harlot whore because of terrible, evil judgments. Poor girl. I'm glad the movie made a very big point of pointing out how, like, much of a victim she was, because Jesus fuck, she was a victim. And I'll get to that more in a bit here. Believe me, I have plenty to say about that. But it's like it's a lot is hinted at there. A lot is hinted at in that flashback, and we just don't see it at first because we don't know exactly what we're supposed to be looking for. That's how these mysteries go. They lure us into things that we're not exactly knowledgeable on, and we start looking in kind of the wrong direction or at the wrong specific thing, and we'll learn something. We'll learn one thing or two things, but not other things. And honestly, I like that about mysteries, personally, because it's like it keeps you guessing the entire time. If you figure everything out, what's the fun in that? Some people like to figure it all out, but I feel like it's better to like have that air of mystery when the final here's how it happened moment happens. When the detective, or I mean in this case most of it was told through the confession, which very fitting. When that moment happens, we want there to still be stuff we didn't figure out. But then once we hear it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Those are the moments I live for in mysteries like this. Knives Out did that excellently. And I think this movie did that excellently. Glass Onion, again, was more making fun of those who overanalyze shit, so not quite what it was going for, intentionally. But even then, it did have some moments like that. It was just earlier on in the movie, like when it revealed that Andy wasn't Andy. So, but let's talk about the religious stuff. And I want to very specifically and foremostly talk about, again, I believe her name was Grace, the Monsignor's mother, the harlot whore. Because the more that they talked about her and the more that they revealed about like everything that happened to her, the more upset I was getting. Not at her, but at the people who treated her the way that they did. It actually like got me a little emotional at one or two points because I was like I felt really bad for her cuz I've been there. I've talked before on how I've had religious trauma because of how I've been raised in the church and things that they've taught. And like I said in the pre-thoughts and everything, I am a Christian. I'm very open about that. It's what I believe. But to say that I believe it wholeheartedly, without question, is just not accurate. I question a lot, especially in a world where so much of the church is bigoted and terrible and disgusting, and in some cases, straight up evil. So much of the church is dedicated to hating on others, to being warriors, like the Monsignor tried to push. That's so much of the, especially here in America, Christian belief centers around. And a lot of that comes from people who conflate Christianity with the religious right, who try to act like those are equatable. Basically, those who are like on the side of the likes of MAGA and whatnot. Those who support the likes of Pat Robertson and shit. People like that. Those are the kind of examples of Christians here in America, at least, who I have had to grow up with and be taught by, and is one of the reasons for having been suicidal back in 2013. Because I was made by the church to feel like not just nothing. I wish that they just made me feel like I was nothing. I was made by the church to feel like I was wrong on every level. And that stemmed from my sexuality. That stemmed from my feelings of gender. That stemmed from just the kind of content I liked to watch or play or engage in, we'll say. I have had preachers tell me to stay away from quote unquote girly things because God made me a man, and that like it would be turning away from God to engage in girly stuff like that, which is fucking stupid for so many reasons. It is demented and dumb. It's just fucking stupid. But that's the kind of ideologies that I had been taught. And on top of that, I had been led to believe, and a lot of churches do this, that men and women shouldn't even interact, especially young men and women, high school and college age. That, like, you can't, a guy and a girl shouldn't ever be alone in a car together unless they're married. Stuff like that. Which, again, demented. But even beyond that, I had been, like, told that things like sex in general is this horrible, disgusting act But at the same time, it's something to be celebrated between a husband and a wife, and it's just like you're contradicting yourself here. You can't say it's something celebratory and it's this horrifying, disgusting act that God looks down on and will smite you for at the same fucking time. It destroyed a lot of my self confidence and made me really hate the idea of myself in a lot of ways. Not just my sexuality, which I at the time was just kind of beginning to understand, but just my body in general gave me a lot of body image issues that I carry to this day, and a lot of internal struggles and pains. And it's tough because that's not something you can just get over when it's like railed into you over and over and over for years. It's something that sticks with you. It's something that you just can't get rid of. And in this movie, we have this girl, this poor girl, who's constantly shamed and mocked and treated like absolute dog shit because she dresses a little looser. Because she, you know, wears clothes that show a little bit of skin. And it's just like, Jesus fuck. This poor girl. Like, the amount of issues that would raise in anyone, much less this girl who like had been treated this way from a young age, and like her breaking down and trying to tear apart the sanctuary, looking for this inheritance, this diamond. I can't blame her for that. Because it was promised her. This fortune was promised to her if she stayed there. But then it was refused to her. The promise was taken back because her father was a piece of shit who wanted to send this message. And in the end, not only ruined her life to the point where this consumed her and she ended up dying of a brain aneurysm, cursing his name at his tomb, but it also ruined her daughter's life. Like, it also ruined the life of this little girl. Or was it his daughter? I don't think it was her daughter. I don't think it was her daughter. I think it was the original priest's granddaughter. But either way, it also ruined her life because she's this child who's, raised to believe this certain thing, and so she just kind of lives with it and hides this diamond and everything, and has to live with that her entire life, and then everything kind of falls apart here at the end. Sorry for it getting darker, by the way. It's getting late. It's just that time of day. It's just after 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, and yeah, it's just that time. I can see if I could like put on a filter to raise the brightness a little, but either way, the point is, it's like in the end, it like twisted this girl into this woman who didn't know anything else and became like this hyper. Let me see if I can. It's not really helping all that much. Oh, that one helps a little bit. But she became like this hyper, focused, this hyper religious woman who put everything into this church, into the Monsignor. And it ended up causing her to do all of this crazy shit, this convoluted plan, because she was basically used as a tool for messaging rather than treated as an actual person. And she didn't know any better as a kid, and when she grew up, it's just all she ever knew because it's all she was ever taught. It sucks. It's terrible. And a lot of people go through shit like this because of the church. The church is so focused on shaming women especially that it's horrifying. It's gross. And it's sexist. And that's on top of all the other shit that like this movie very briefly touches on with the son talking about all the stuff like he tried to like talk about in politics. Like, you know, the homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, general racism and stuff. Like all the shit he brought up that was from when he was trying to have his political career. And it's insane. It's just pure insanity. That this is that real and that like heartbreaking. It it just it emulates real life a little too well. I I've been through just so much with the church to the point where I've many times considered leaving it altogether and almost did. The only reason that I'm still in it is because I found a church that accepts me not just as pansexual, but as trans and non binary. I found a church that accepts the kind of stuff I'm into and is all about, you know, love and inclusivity instead of hate and violence and shit. And even then, even after all these years of being with this church, I still struggle with doubts and I still question a lot. My faith has been honestly irrevocably shaken. And I don't think it'll ever be what it used to be. But I also don't think that's inherently a bad thing. I think that we should question things. That's something that I would be like called a demon for by a lot of the preachers that I've had in the past. But it's something I very strongly believe in, that if you are a believer in anything, you should not only be willing to question things, but you should almost be required to. Because you're not going to understand everything. And if you're like especially trying to be a good person, there's a lot that you're going to have a lot of trouble reconciling with. And I don't have all the answers to that, and I'm not going to pretend I do. I can't tell you whether it's right or wrong to continue following in something like this if you don't know if you believe in everything fully. I'm not the smartest person to be able to express that kind of doubt in a way to really properly know what to say. I hope I'm making sense. But it's a scenario where I have been through a lot with the church, so I understand how terrifying and bad it can be. And now I question everything, and I even argue constantly against a lot of people of the church, a lot of so-called Christians who are, you know, terrible and bigoted and just generally, you know, horrifically evil and violent. It's something I make a big point out of. Even though I'm a Christian, I'm not like a mindless sheep. I'm able to form opinions and thoughts and questions and express those. And I think, again, that that's important to do. And so you then have just a lot of the questions of faith that generally happen as well, such as just the existence and idea of God and everything. And again, I'm maybe not the smartest, most well expressed person to talk about that, but my view on it is very simple. I don't fucking know. I have no fucking clue if God exists. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to like pretend otherwise. I have no fucking clue. My faith is not built in this idea of knowing. My faith is built, if I'm being completely honest here, on fear. Not like the fear of like what will happen otherwise exactly. Well, kind of. I'm not like afraid. I'm not just a believer in God and everything because I'm afraid of going to hell. I'm actually more afraid of what happens to my consciousness after death. It's a very existential fear. And it's something that I struggle greatly with. It's something that has literally kept me up at night crying in my bed because it scares me that much. The belief that there is God and there is heaven makes me feel better. It makes me less scared. And while I may have gotten into Christianity and into the church because my parents took me originally, and initially it was because of other reasons that I became into it, I guess you could say. For the longest time, it's been specifically centered around that fear. And like I said, I question a lot. There's a lot of things that don't make sense to me in terms of what the Bible says. There's a lot of things that I've heard preached that just doesn't click. A lot of things that are just terrible. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But at the same time, having even just the tiniest bit of added feelings of security is enough to calm those fears for me. And that's why I'm, let's be honest, still there. Because I lost my faith, as you would think about it, a long time ago. Like, I lost my unwavering belief a long time ago. And again, partially because of the judgments I myself received. When I first came out as trans, I was going to a different church at the time. And I literally, without even being told, by the way, I found out through a roundabout way, I would say weeks later. I, without being told, had my membership at that church revoked. I was never told this would happen. And when I found out about it through this roundabout way, weeks later, and I asked about it, they basically just told me that they couldn't they couldn't keep me in the membership with the beliefs that I was presenting. More or less. That's I don't obviously remember exactly what they said, but that was more or less the gist. And it was at that point that I basically lost my faith completely. And I was like one step away from leaving the church altogether. And I was suggested to come to the church I'm currently at, give them a try. And again, this church has been nothing but accepting right from the start. This church has helped me even get some of my more feminine clothing. This church literally has a table at multiple Pride events that I've even helped out with. Because more than anything else, this church is about love and acceptance and reaching out to people to, not preach at them, but speak to them and their fears, their worries, their concerns about life, things that are happening in the world. And it's not just like this aimless, false sense of, camaraderie either. It's not them pretending to be inclusive, but also still preaching like, oh, but like, you do have to get over this. God loves you no matter what, but this is still something you have to work past in order to be truly redeemed or something. It's like, no, they're not like that at all. They accept anyone and everyone for who they are. And it's great. It's been a huge haven for me. And I found a community there, we'll say, that has helped me feel a lot more at home than I've ever felt in the church. And seeing how this congregation in this movie treated this young woman for literally nothing other than dressing a certain way. The way it drove her to, in anger and pain, tear up the sanctuary. And Martha, as a kid, her words, her vindictive, hateful words, driving this poor woman to also strike a child because just out of anger, just out of like breaking down. Mind you, again, it was this child who was so hateful and vindictive against her, and only because that's how she was raised to believe. It's just that kind of fucked up ideology is the kind of reasons that had drove me away from faith. That kind of warrior ideology drove me away from faith. And like you even see it like during like that kind of moment where it's showing the Monsignor preaching and all, and you see like that single mother and her kid, her daughter, in the audience, and you see him specifically targeting them and basically screaming at and shaming them until they like get up and walk out. It's like that kind of stuff like in this movie broke my heart so fucking badly. Because again, I've been there. Not like literally being screamed at to that level, thank God. But I have been to the point where it's felt like that. Where I have had preachers literally tell me to my face that I am turning against God because of the way I am. Because of the way I am. And it's just, it fucked me up so badly. And so, yes, this movie very much spoke to me. Any movie that touches on religion in this kind of way is going to speak to me. And that was definitely one of the biggest highlights of the film for me. One of the biggest things that, connected. And again, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't exactly along the lines of what I went through, but close enough. I I really felt like they nailed that aspect as well. And it really just worked in terms of how it was written, presented, acted. Everyone did a absolutely phenomenal job. But like I said, this movie is a very difficult watch compared to the first two Knives Out films. It's very, very serious. It's very intense. And it's, again, the personal aspects of it did get to me. And so, this is one of those movies that, like I said, extremely well written, extremely well directed and acted, not fun to watch at all. Not really that enjoyable. And so I'm kind of mixed overall on it. I think the best way I can put it at this point is that I really like this movie, but I don't personally love it because of how it makes me feel, because of how intense it is, because of how dark it is compared to the first two. And that leaves me with a question of how to even rate a movie like this. Because I acknowledge it's like, honestly, a 5-star movie in terms of writing and direction and all of that. But to say that I shouldn't take my personal feelings into account is just not right. I believe everybody should take their personal feelings into account when it comes to rating and reviewing films and all. Because your personal experiences shape who you are, what you believe, what you think, how you react to something. And so I think it's kind of the best option to kind of, I don't want to say split it down the middle, because that's not quite an accurate way to view it. It's not like, oh, my personal issues with this make this movie really bad to me, but the writing is really good, and so it's like kind of right in between. No, it's not quite like that. My personal issues just make it hard for me to watch, just make it hard for me to enjoy. But it's still a great movie otherwise. I think if I had to give it a number off the top of my head, based only on this initial viewing, I would say, like, I don't know, maybe a 9 out of 10, accounting for the personal setbacks, the personal issues. That, again, aren't really issues with the movie. It's just things that connect to me and make me emotionally despondent or something. I don't know. You get what I'm trying to say, hopefully, but it's like, it's really up there because the writing and direction and even the stuff it's saying about religion. But it's so well done that it upsets me. How about that? That's a way to put it. And again, it's just very serious in tone. But I would love to hear your thoughts, because I've talked for way too fucking long on this. My recording timer says it's been over 50 minutes since I started these afterthoughts. What the fuck? So tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you so, so much for tuning in. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.